Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Hellinger, weeknight news anchor at 11 Alive in Atlanta. Welcome to the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series. This is the debate among the Republican candidates for Congressional District 10. So we begin right away. Let's meet the candidates for this debate. They are in alphabetical order. Timothy Barr serves as a member of the Georgia House of Representatives from the 103rd District. Mr. Barr, under the weather today, and regrets he will not be able to join us. He is represented by an empty podium. Dr. Paul Broun is a physician and former U.S. House of Representative Congressman. Mike Collins, an entrepreneur and business owner. David Curry, the former Georgia State Revenue Commissioner. Vernon Jones is a former member of the Georgia House of Representatives and CEO of DeKalb County. Marc McMain is an entrepreneur and business owner. Alan Sims is a veteran and a pilot. And Mitchell Swan is a veteran of the Marine Corps. So let's meet our panelists right now. Sandra Parrish, well-known voice from WSB Radio, a legislative reporter, has been a part of the media landscape in Atlanta since 1995. And Danelle Suggs, very experienced reporter for the Atlanta Business Chronicle. We are glad to have both of you here with us. For complete rules on today's debate, please visit the Atlanta Press Club website, atlantapressclub.org. So to begin this debate, each candidate will be asked one question by one of the panelists. Candidates have 60 seconds to answer each question. So here we go. Danelle Suggs, you get the first question. This to Mitchell Swan.
Colonel Swan, my question to you is this. Believe it or not, there are counties in District 10 that don't really have a lot of broadband internet service. Hancock County, Jasper County, for example. Is there a role for federal government to bring internet access to the 10th Congressional District?
Well, we can certainly take measures to bring those rural counties, some high-speed internet. But I also want to just share with people, when we start to bring those infrastructure resources there, to include rural hospitals, better roads, better water systems, off-the-well systems, you get sprawl. And we're seeing that with Rivian right now, right? So there has to be a balance between trying to keep resources there for people to be able to stay connected with the greater communities outside of the rural region, but balancing it where they don't make it so attractive, they actually start to get developed. It's just something that those folks don't absolutely want.
Sandra Parrish, your turn to ask a question of David Curry.
Mr. Curry, the Georgia legislature passed this session a change to Georgia's income tax law, reducing it from 5.75% to 4.99% over a 7-year period, and then increasing the standard deduction. What are your thoughts on this measure that was passed, and what do you think about proposals that would do away with state income tax altogether?
Sandra, excellent question. Thank you so much. For years, we've heard that we want to go to a fair tax or flat tax. And to do away with income tax immediately is a little bit drastic. I believe what this governor has done is taken a measured approach to reducing the state income tax. Our Georgia families need to do away with the Georgia income tax, so our Georgia families have more money to spend. Look, I believe Tennessee does it, Florida does it, Texas does it. Why can't Georgia do it? As your revenue commissioner, we reduced our spending. We don't have a revenue problem in the state of Georgia. We had a spending problem, but under the leadership, our current leadership, we've got that spending under control. And it's very similar to what's happening in the federal government. Our federal government is spending too much money. But to answer your question, I believe doing away with the state income tax is the right solution.
Danelle, your question now for Alan Sims.
Colonel Sims, the infrastructure law passed by President Biden last year included language prioritizing the building of Interstate 14. Part of that will come through District 10. Do you have a position on the building of Interstate 14 and securing funding for a Georgia portion of that highway?
You know, the interstates over time have radically transformed the way our country conducts business and has directed the development. You'll notice around the interstates, that's where it's developed the most. And some of our places that the interstates have bypassed are the places that have dried up over time. Some of those have fortunately been revitalized recently. I believe that Interstate 14 will be a good thing for for Georgia 10, and I support it.
Next question for Marc McMain. Sandra Parrish, you're up.
Mr. McMain, tell us why you support term limits and how many terms do you think U.S. representatives should serve?
Boy, I'm glad you served that up to me. That's a perfect question for Marc McMain. Listen, I'm a term limits candidate. I think career politicians are destroying our country. Nowhere did our founding fathers ever imagine that people were going to go to Washington, D.C. and make a career out of the House of Representatives. And that's what's happening. You got people up there for 16, 18, 20, 30, 40 years. That has to end. I'm a term limits candidate. I feel that if you go to Washington and you work hard legislating and serving your constituents, you should be exhausted after 6 or 8 years maximum. You should be ready at that point to hand the baton off to the next man or woman who has the energy and enthusiasm to continue the fight. So I think 3 terms, 4 terms maximum in the House of Representatives is more than adequate to get your job done if you're working hard.
Next, we hear from Mike Collins. Donnell, your question.
Mr. Collins, you've stated your opposition to the proposed Rivian electric vehicle plant, which sits in the 10th Congressional District. If elected, what would you do in Congress or through federal government in connection with Rivian?
Well, you know, and thank you for the question. I appreciate it. You know, first of all, let me say this. I'm a business person. I am totally for economic development. I have no problem. As a matter of fact, I like entrepreneurship and I like private businesses. But what you saw in that case, and this is a local issue, this is not a federal issue, but what you saw in that case was a very lack of transparency. And you had a lot of local people that I spoke to and that I saw that were confused about what was going on. And they didn't have any clear answers. And that's what they were asking for. Now, as far as a free market person, I am very much for free markets. I don't really agree with giving tax incentives to encourage economic development in areas because it actually hurts the other local businesses that are already there. It gives them an unfair advantage competitively if they get that tax break to hire people at a different labor rate.
Donnell, you have a question again here, this time for Vernon Jones.
Depending on what happens, Mr. Jones, excuse me, depending on what happens in November, who would you support for Republican Speaker of the House or Republican House Minority Leader?
Well, I've made it clear. I'm American First Agenda candidate. I was endorsed by President Trump. I would like to have President Trump as Speaker of the House. We cannot afford to wait for 4 more years or 3 more years for Joe Biden. We have to take Joe Biden out now. I am all for President Trump because I will also be offering articles of impeachment to impeach Joe Biden and Kamala Harris because they have failed in their responsibilities. Look at what's happening at the borders. The borders are being overrun. Resources are going there. As a matter of fact, now they're paying cell phones for illegals. Then they're also looking over in the Veterans Department where they're literally now taking doctors from the VA and having those doctors to go to the borders to provide medical care to illegals. So this is an issue where we need to impeach President Biden, Kamala Harris, and get elected Speaker of the House, President Trump, and then he can elevate into the presidency before 2024. We can't afford to wait until the next election.
Sandra, you get the final question in this round for Paul Broun.
Dr. Brown, when you were representing the 10th District in Congress, you voted no on late-term abortion ban in 2013 to make a statement. Now, as we're awaiting the U.S. Supreme Court to take another look at Roe versus Wade, which, if overturned, could push forward Georgia's fetal heartbeat law. Explain your vote in 2013, and do you want to see Roe versus Wade overturned?
We must overturn Roe versus Wade. I'm a medical doctor, and the very first bill I introduced in Congress was my Sanctity of Human Life Act, which defines life beginning at fertilization. I believe very firmly that God cannot continue to bless America unless we stop this murder of almost 1 million unborn babies every year. That's the reason Georgia Right to Life has endorsed my candidacy. In fact, I'm the only candidate here today that has been endorsed by Georgia Right to Life. It's the greatest moral issue we face as a nation. Now, as far as that vote is concerned, I was one of the original co-sponsors of the bill. But our speaker, John Boehner, decided he wanted to play politics with it. And he knew it was not going to pass through the U.S. Senate. And I'm not for playing politics with this issue. It's got to stop. We've got to stop the murder of our unborn children, and I'll fight very hard to do that.
All right, that concludes the first round of the debate. The candidates will now ask a question to an opponent of their choice. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask the question, then 60 seconds to respond, and the candidate who asks the question will then have 30 seconds for a rebuttal. By random selection, Vernon Jones, you may ask the first question.
Well, my question is not so much to the panelists. My question or my comments is directly to the people of the 10th Congressional District. Listen, you want someone that will fight for you. You want someone that will stand up to term limits, make sure we get term limits passed. You want someone who would go and pass a budget. We need a balanced budget amendment in Washington. I'll fight for that. But we also need to make sure we secure our borders. What's happening with the waste of taxpayers' dollars, the overrunning of our borders? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris failing to do their job. That's what's concerning to me. I know to many of you. Also, inflation. We have to get a hold on inflation. Look at what it costs you at a gas pump. Look at what it costs you for a pound of ground meat.
All right, Mr. Jones, your 30 seconds.
Thank you so much.
Paul Broun, your turn to question one of your opponents.
My daughter works for a major corporation, and as a young mother, she objects to the policies of mandating COVID vaccines as a condition for her employment. And I fully support her objection. I want to ask every person here to hold up their hands. Would you support a federal law that prohibits corporations from requiring a mandatory vaccine as a condition of employment? Please hold up your hand. I won't wait 60 seconds for them. They all answered. Folks, that's the problem. Congress thinks that they need to solve every issue in Washington, D.C. The truth is that it's not in the Constitution. If it's not in the Constitution, it's to be dealt with the states and the people. Limiting federal government is one of my top priorities and has been. We need to abolish whole departments, and I've got bills written to do so. As for vaccine mandates and other issues not specified federal, the best solution comes from the wisdom of our founders to defer to the states or to the people, as the 10th Amendment demands.
Mike Collins, you are up next, and your question for one of your opponents.
All right, I'm going to ask an opponent a question. Colonel Swan, I want to ask you about a book that you wrote. I know that you're a veteran, and I appreciate you serving our country like you have. I think you stated that you started under Reagan and finished under Trump.
Yes, sir.
But you've also had some things in your personal life, and you've written a book. And I'd love for you just to take a minute to explain the title, the middle of it, and the summary of the whole thing.
Well, that was very generous. Yes. In 2015, when I was still a Marine colonel, I wrote a book called Broken Arrow, Christ's Last Stand. And what it is it's an argument where I frame out that we are the last Christian nation of consequence on the planet, that Judeo-Christian values built this nation, and that in order for us to stay great, we need to return to those values. I've always told everyone we all want to make America great again, but that will never happen until we make Americans great again.
All right, Mitchell Swan, it is.
Did I get a 30-second rebuttal?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. You know, I also want to commend and thank Colonel Sims for your service as well.
How about me?
And Dr. Paul Broun, your service as well. But what I'd like to say, too, is, you know, we do owe our veterans a debt of gratitude. We owe them more than we could ever repay them. And that's one thing I've always harped on, especially in health care. Our veterans deserve better, and we should do better. As a matter of fact, I've been out there talking and speaking. You know what we ought to do? We should give the veterans the health care plan that Congress and their staff has, and what we ought to do is turn around and give Congress and their staff the veterans' health care plan, and we'll see how that works out for them.
All right, Mitchell Swan, you are up.
All right, my question is going to be for Paul Broun. So, Paul, you want us to bring you back to Congress. Now, during your first tenure, just as an overview of some top waves, we had Obamacare, the collapse of the banking systems. No one held accountable for that. I had the expansion and renewal of the Patriot Act, higher taxes. I had Fast and Furious and Benghazi, which I still don't have answers to. I had same-sex marriage and the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the DOD. So I want to know, why would we want to put you back and get a second dose of that?
I didn't do all those things, Mitch. In fact, I fought against every one of them. You talk about the out-of-control spending. I personally introduced and passed more spending cuts into law than any other member of Congress. And in fact, I joined with some other fiscally conservative, responsible Republicans, and we forced John Boehner and company to cut discretionary spending by hundreds of billions of dollars. We've got to stop this out of control spending. We've got to deal with this debt that is just totally unsustainable. It's causing inflation. We've got to get rid of the Federal Reserve. We've got a bill to do that. I was very effective in trying to cut the spending, stop all those issues that you talked about. I voted against every one of them. I will again. I'm the only truly proven original intent constitutionalist out of this whole slate of campaign opponents here. So bring back Brown is the solution to try to heal our land and get America going in the right direction again.
Mr. Swan, you get a rebuttal?
Yes, the whole point of that question is just to say that we need leadership right now in Washington. We are desperate for that. Strong men build strong nations. Voting records do not build the substance of a man up there. You know, when Paul did not have a voting record is when he first took office in the 10th district. But since he left this seat with a powerful voting record, he is yet to be elected in any of the other positions he's run for, and I'm skeptical why we should elect him again.
All right, David Curry, you are next on the docket. Your question, please, for an opponent.
Thank you. I want to ask Dr. Paul Broun a question. One of the first pieces of legislation to sponsor will be a term limit bill. I believe that term limits will go a long way in solving the dysfunction in D.C. 80% of Americans believe in term limits. Paul, you've already served 4 terms, as Colonel Swan has said, and you've stated many times that you would not support a term limits bill. My question, why do you believe that career politicians are good for this country?
Well, career politicians are not good for this country, but the issue is not career politicians in unlimited terms. The problem is unlimited government. We've got to stop this unlimited government, and that's exactly what I fought to do. When I was in Congress, there were 2 documents that I utilized in everything that I did: the U.S. Constitution and God's inerrant holy word, the Bible of the inerrant word of God. And I will do that again when I go back there. I have built-in term limits. I won't be there for 30 or 40 years. And I am the only candidate who has a proven conservative voting record. And voting for me to be your congressman in Georgia 10 is the only solution really to heal our land, because I'm the only one that you can truly count on, because you can know the kind of congressman I will be by seeing the kind of congressman I was.
David Curry, you get a rebuttal?
Thank you. You said when you were up there, you introduced all the spending cuts. The national debt today is $30 trillion. The national debt when you took office was $7 trillion. The day you left was $17 trillion. I don't believe my grandson can afford many more of those kind of spending cuts. Thank you.
Spending cuts?
Yeah. Our national debt went up $10 trillion when you held
I need to
office.
cut spending. That's what I did when I was there.
I guess that's that Common Core math.
Alan Sims, your turn. You're up next. Please ask your question.
There's a lot going on in the world right now, and it's up to our military forces to be ready. I'd like to ask Vernon Jones his assessment of our military readiness, and if you think it's deficient, what do you plan to do about it?
Well, first and foremost, I want to send a big shout out. I'm a big supporter of veterans and the men and women in the military. My dad served in World War II, 3rd Army. My brother served too as well. Right now, I've always said that veterans need more and more support. Our military right now is not ready, especially when you're dealing with an experiment. We don't have time for social experiments. The military men and women, they want someone who knows they have their back, who's fit and ready to fight and properly trained to defend this country. And right now, I'm very concerned under Joe Biden's leadership that we have a weak military.
Mr. Sims, you get a response, a rebuttal?
I agree with your assessment, Vernon, that our military is showing deficiency. And that's a big concern to me as a 34-year veteran and as a former pilot. Right now, we have commanders that are having to choose between today's readiness and modernization of our equipment for the future high-end fight against China. Right now, our fighter pilots get less training per month than they did when I was flying just a few years ago. In Congress, I'll ensure current readiness and investment for future fight.
And a reminder to everybody, this is show and tell to a degree. You can tell, but don't show. So no props, no accoutrements that pop out of your suit jackets or anything like that. So if we could keep that to a minimum, we would appreciate it. All right, Marc McMain, you get the final question in this round. You're up.
Yeah, look, Vernon, we are thrilled that you left the Democratic Party and made the conversion to be a Republican. We welcome you. From the bottom of my heart, we welcome you. But like a recovering alcoholic, that is a 12-step process. And I don't drink, but you're still in step 1. The smell of liberal whiskey is still on your breath. You voted against the heartbeat bill. Now, for those of you at home, if you've never seen Vernon speak, he is a master at his craft. He is an expert politician. His mouth is like a circus. Get out your popcorn and watch the show. Vernon, why would you vote no against the heartbeat bill?
Thank you very much for the compliment. First and foremost, I didn't vote against life. I voted against a bad bill. That bill, you and I both know, was a pandering bill. Life starts at conception, not at 6 weeks. That's why if you elect me and I go to Congress, I would fight to defund Planned Parenthood. Your tax dollars will not be used to pay for abortions. That is not right. It shouldn't happen. And so as far as a litmus test, look, I'm no different from Donald Trump. I'm no different from Governor Sonny Perdue, Governor Nathan Deal, Ronald Reagan. All of those were Democrats. They didn't go through a 12-step program, if that's what you call it. But what it is, you have liberals, rhinos like this that don't want real conservatives in this party, moving this party forward, building this party, and having an opportunity to take back this country. I'm the one that was endorsed by Donald Trump, not him.
Mr. McMain, you get a rebuttal.
Yeah, look, I've spent the past 30 years building businesses, raising my family, volunteering in my community, serving God. I am blessed to have built the reputation when you come to Walton County that precedes me. I've been endorsed by 11 sheriffs, mayors, commissioners that live in my community and know my reputation. Vernon, it is your reputation that precedes you that is of great concern to thousands of us in the 10th District.
So that concludes our second round. And for those of you who are just joining us, we appreciate that you're now with us. And this is the debate between Republican candidates for the Congressional District number 10. We are now going to go back to the panel to ask questions to the candidate of their choice until we run out of time. As a point of moderator privilege, something I'm well versed on, I may also ask questions of the candidates, and I will determine when a rebuttal is appropriate. So Danelle Suggs, you are first up to the plate to bat right now. You've got the question.
My first question for round 3 is for Mr. McMain.
Yes, sir.
In the first round, you said that career politicians are destroying our country. As a businessman, you're running for office. If you win, you're a politician. I just wanted to ask if you can explain that.
I sure can. I tell you what, the last thing in the world I want to do is have to run for office. My youngest son just graduated from high school last year. We're going to be empty nesters. I've been blessed. I've started several successful small businesses. So my wife and I were looking forward to perhaps the best years of our life. But because of career politicians that are destroying our country, that are destroying our economy, that are destroying our borders, and the path of destruction left behind by both sides, not just Democrats, but by Republicans who go up there and make a career for themselves, guys like me have to get involved. I'm an expert of cleaning crap up and straightening things out, and that's what I plan to do in Washington, D.C.
Can I make a comment on term limits, though? We've talked a lot about that. Here's my thought on term limits. I think we're all against career politicians, but understand the issues that we're talking about right now does nothing for the American people. I'm trying to get people to have an abundant life again in this nation. 28 months ago, we had the strongest economy in the history of Earth, and we have turned off 2 million barrels of domestic oil production per day. And that has driven up the cost, that has driven up subsequently the cost of food, travel, energy, everything. Doing term limits right now as a lead concern will do nothing to help our struggling families put food on the table, make life more affordable, and get our economy going. That is
So I'm going to jump in on you at this point.
Yes, sir.
And since you opted to take this on your own volition here, I think everybody else gets about 15 seconds on this subject. So I'm going to go right down the line. Don't go more than that, but make your point in relation to what he just said. You can begin.
I do believe in term limits, and I'm against career politicians. But let's look. It's not our top priority right now. We do have things that are on fire that need to be put out, and term limits can be part of that, but it doesn't need to take the leading role.
All right, next.
Look, I can chew and walk and chew gum at the same time. Term limits have to be implemented. This has nothing to do with anything other than I can get it done in 6 or 8 years. If you guys can't get it done in 6 or 8 years, do not apply for this job. I will get it done in 6 or 8 years. Term limits and other things that are important to this country.
Next.
I've support term limits. I've signed documents saying I will support term limits. Politicians shouldn't go to Washington to wine, dine, and die. Remember the contract with America. They were supposed to have term limits. They failed on that. That's why we're where we are right now.
Let's keep on moving.
Certainly believe in term limits. I signed a term limit pledge. The reason we have the issues today is because we got career politicians. You got Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, you got Chuck Schumer. The reason our country is being destroyed today is by career politicians who do not care about you, your families, or America. I fully support it.
Yeah, I've supported term limits from the day I got into this race, and just signing the term limit pledge really means nothing. I will term limit myself. There is a difference between a politician and a statesman. I want to be a statesman. That's someone that goes and serves. Your career politicians up there, they're up there, and once they get there, their whole objective is to get reelected and reelected.
All right, that's time, and let's wrap it up on this segment.
I get my time?
Yep.
I get my seniority back, which is going to be huge, because I will regain the chairmanship of the Science Investigations Committee. We must never, ever, ever allow our country to be shut down like it has been with COVID. And I'll get that seniority back, and I'll make sure that we don't have this to ever happen again.
All right, Senator Parrish, it is your turn to ask a question now.
This question is for Mr. Collins. So as owner of a trucking business, and not unlike other jobs, the trucking industry has been hard hit with a shortage of truck drivers, and it's affecting or compounding the supply chain issue. Now, Governor Kemp has an executive order in place right now, extending the hours that truckers can be on the roads, expanding the height and weight limits. Do you think this will help in the short term, and then long term, what can we do to address the supply chain issue?
Well, I appreciate that question. Yes, I've spent 30 years in the trucking industry building a business from the ground up with my wife and of course, my family. It's the first thing I've always said. You know, if you want to address the issue that we have right now with the 80,000 short and the amount of goods that we need moving, all you had to do, and it was a hearing in Congress months ago, increase the driving time by 30 minutes, and that would eliminate that 80,000 shortage. You could do it short term. You realize that during the pandemic, though, our truck driving schools got shut down for well over a year, and that new pool of drivers coming in was not there anymore. So that's going to take a while to get that filtered through, because most trucking companies, probably 98% of them, 99% of them can't hire a driver unless they've got 2 years experience. The other thing that you need to look at is true infrastructure bills. We had a crummy infrastructure bill that went through up there, and it did nothing to help improve congestion, especially around Atlanta. But what it did do was help fund Green New Deals and pet projects for those career politicians up there and the left-wing lunatics. And that's what we've got to address.
Donnell Suggs?
I'd like to respond to that.
Go ahead.
It's been intellectually dishonest almost. I hear Mike Collins talk about that and your question to him, being a trucking business. First of all, he inherited that from his father. Him and his wife did not build that. Secondly, he got almost $1 million in PPP loans, almost $1 million when Jody Heiss decided to run for Congress. Then he stepped right back and got a waiver and then invested $500,000 almost in his campaign. He's used taxpayers' dollars to literally fund his personal aspirations and campaigns. To hear him talk about truckers when that money didn't go to those truckers. So I know it's been like the Hunter Biden laptop. It's been a cover-up, but this needs to be discussed. What did he do with that money? Why did he take taxpayers' dollars and then loan it to his campaign?
You get a rebuttal to that.
Good. First of all, my wife and I did start our trucking company. You can look it up in the Secretary of State. It's there. Second of all, that's just a disgusting lie, and it doesn't deserve even a reply to it. Because I'm going to tell y'all something. I've had 30 years in the career business of building a business and providing jobs to people in the 10th district. But let me tell you about Vernon Jones. When he's attacking the trucking industry and he's attacking hardworking families of the 10th district, he's really attacking your family, your shared values, and our work ethics. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about your family.
I think you're telling
Vernon,
He
you're
doesn't care about
accused
your
of a
shared
lie.
values.
Rebut
He's
the
never
lie if
created
accused.
a job in his life. He is a corrupt career politician and a DeKalb County Democrat.
All right, let's stop. Mr. Jones?
He said quite a bit. First of all, you were raised a Democrat. Your daddy was elected as a Democrat. You were a liberal. You're a rhino.
You don't know what I was raised as.
Secondly, well, let the record show for itself. His dad was elected a Democrat county commissioner. He was raised as a Democrat. Next thing, I've created more jobs than he has. As a chief executive officer, I was responsible for economic development. I created jobs,
Public
put people to
sector doesn't
work.
create any
Secondly,
jobs.
let me say this. Mike Collins did not answer that question. He took $500,000, where he took almost $1 million of PPP loan to the people of 10th District, almost $1 million, and you know what he did? He put it in his campaign. Now, he needs to be investigated, although I understand there's an investigation going on, but he is corrupt as they come, and the truckers didn't get a damn penny.
Hey, if this turns out to be the Mike and Vernon show, we're going to lose viewers. Let's get back on track.
I like it. I support your idea, and I give you an affirmation here with my right arm. Danelle
Amen,
Suggs,
too.
it's
Well,
all yours.
I would like to address, though, you started it off with intellectually insincere. Intellectually insincerity is saying that you voted against a heartbeat bill because you think it didn't go far enough. As a conservative, are you going to vote against tax reductions because you feel they don't go far enough? So we'll keep paying just as high a taxes and we'll still keep killing babies because you don't think it went far enough?
You get a response, Mr. Jones?
First of all, I'm the only one up here that has a record of cutting taxes. I actually cut taxes as chief executive officer. As a matter of fact, the tax cut that the state just passed, the legislature and the governor got that idea from me. I've been campaigning on that for the past few years. And, you know, I'm sorry that the young man doesn't have a record of doing anything, but I voted against the heartbeat bill because life starts at conception, not at 6 weeks. It was a pandering bill. That's just like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden pandering to black people. And by the way, that's why I'm so excited that that the Supreme Court will overturn Roe versus Wade.
All right, I'm going to have to
move.
move on, Mr. Jones. Danelle, it is all yours now. Let's break the scrum here.
Okay, I'm going to move my question way over here to the left. That way we can
Keep
get
it
out
on
of
the right.
center of the room. Oh, you're right. Dr. Brown,
Yes, sir.
on your campaign website, you've been endorsed by the National Association of Gun Rights.
Right.
And there was a tweet on your campaign website as well about 5 reasons you need to own an AR-15. Do you believe everyday Americans should own assault rifles?
I think every American should be able to own, carry, and utilize any firearm that they want to. It's a God-given right protected by the Second Amendment. When I was in Congress, I started a caucus in the Republican, well, actually it was bipartisan at the time, called the Second Amendment Task Force. National Association for Gun Rights has endorsed me, and they know that I will fight to make sure that we maintain our Second Amendment rights. In fact, the Second Amendment and the First Amendment are the pillars of liberty. The second protects the first. We must never, ever lose either one of those. And so I will continue to fight for Second Amendment rights. That's what started my political activism to begin with. And I've been a Second Amendment as well as a pro-life activist for decades. And the only candidate in this race that can say that.
Sandra Parrish.
So going back to Mr. Jones, so as a former Democratic state representative and a CEO over a majority Democrat county, and living outside the 10th District, how do you convince Republican voters in the 10th that you have their best interest at heart and that you relate to issues that they are concerned about?
Yes, again, I created jobs. They relate to that. I've cut taxes. They relate to that. I'm a farm boy. I grew up on a farm. I understand agricultural issues. I understand small business. I've been self-employed myself. I understand that. And let me tell you, I am much more in touch with their values. And when I was at DeKalb County, remember, I supported Republicans then. Len Westmoreland, as a Democrat, I went down and endorsed him for his congressional race when he was running. I came out as a Democrat when nobody else on the stage came out for Donald Trump like I did, and I put it all on the line. Why? Because I believed in him a lot more than I did in Joe Biden. I was right then and I'm right now. So this litmus test, that's for rhinos. That's for those who want to compare themselves to being a Republican. Now, you may call me a dino, but you'll never call me a rhino. Let me be clear. I am as solid as Stone Mountain, and that's why the 10th is responding to me. That's why President Trump has endorsed me over everybody else up here, because he knows I believe and I've supported the America First agenda.
Vernon, that's part of the problem we've got in America. We got bureaucrats in Washington that believe they create jobs. No CEO of any county has ever created a job.
Amen.
Small business owners in America create jobs. No bureaucrat create a job.
You get a response to that, Mr.
You're absolutely incorrect. That's your shallowness in understanding how government works. I've been a chief executive. When we passed those bond initiatives, creating infrastructure improvements, building parks and libraries, we put people to work. Who recruited PepsiCo to come out to Stone Mountain selling our water because our rates are less than most metro area counties? I've worked closely with the Chamber of Commerce. My record is there. You just don't know about it. I've created jobs. Many of those government programs, if they're used right for infrastructure, they do create jobs. Engineers went to work, folks paving streets, building sidewalks.
All right, we got to move on.
Many people went to work.
Donnell Suggs, you're up.
My question is for Colonel Sims. Do you feel this candidate pool could be a little more diverse? It doesn't necessarily represent the entirety of District 10. Do you think maybe we could have had a little more diversity with this pool?
We need some Army guys, too. I'm just kidding. Veteran Joe.
I think the diversity will come in November when we have a Republican candidate against a Democratic candidate. Right now, we have a pool of candidates that really do reflect the values of the conservatives within the 10th District.
But it would have been nice to have a female, a woman, with 2 X chromosomes. That'd been nice.
Timothy Barr.
So maybe the question, to dovetail out of that question, is this, that all of you politically are pretty much in the same zip code in terms of what you believe and what you would like to accomplish in Washington, D.C. What differentiates you from the other candidates here? And I think we're going to go right down the line here, 15 or 20 seconds. What makes you different from those that you're standing next to? We begin with you, Dr. Brown.
Well, I have the proven conservative, Christian, constitutional voting record of fighting against this out-of-control spending, out-of-control government. I voted against that when I was there. I voted against it again. I'll get my seniority back. And in having my seniority, I'll be able to chair the Science Investigations Committee to make sure that the American people deserve to know the truth about COVID.
We're going to have to move on.
And I'll be glad to do that.
Quick statements here. No long speeches here, nothing long-winded, but a common sense approach to what you will represent as an individual in a collective body.
I thought it was what made us different from all the other candidates on the
Same
stage.
thing.
Okay. First of all, I was with Donald Trump campaign early on, way before he was even a nominee, not just Johnny come lately. Second of all, I've never been elected to anything, y'all. I've been in the private sector for over 30 years in the most regulated and taxed industry that there is in this country. That alone gives me a different perspective from everybody else up here.
Let's keep going. Let's keep on.
Which camera? I don't see a light. I want to make sure I'm looking at the camera. Thank you. I see it now. Look, as a 14-year-old kid living in a motel, moving to a camper, I started on assembly line at Ford Motor Company, went to trade school. Nobody has ever given David Curry anything but an opportunity. We've built businesses, my wife and I. As your revenue commissioner for the state of Georgia, we cut that budget $29 million in a 2-year period. No one has my resume. No one is hungrier to serve you as your next congressman.
Keep on moving, Mr. Jones.
A lot of people say they're with Trump, but Trump wasn't with them. We know that. Let me be clear. I've been a chief executive. I've actually run a government. I'm the only one that's run a government. I have more legislative experience, 12 years in the Georgia House of Representatives. I have an A record from the NRA. I've also been a farmer. I've also been self-employed. I've also been unemployed. I identify people, and I'm minority. And let me tell you, none of them have done anything to recruit minority conservatives to the Republican Party like I have.
We keep moving.
Look, on the journey that I've taken from being broke as a teenager to having started several successful small businesses has prepared me perfectly for Washington. I'm a leader. I'm a tenacious worker. I'm fiscally responsible, and Christ is my moral compass. We do not need more expert politicians in Washington, D.C. We have to get out of our love affair with career politicians and get outsiders back into Washington and clean up the mess that's been created.
All right. You're up.
We need somebody who can work collaboratively and build consensus. I've proven that at the Pentagon. We need somebody who can move things forward for the American people. In Israel, I got the Israelis and the Palestinians to come to agreement. There's proof.
And final one.
Yes, so I'm a 30-year Marine Corps colonel. Came in since 1987, got out in 2017. I've been fighting for this country before the first Gulf War, which I was in. I deployed for 6 years since this war of 9/11. I share that with you. During that time, I had 2 great experiences. One was crafting U.S. policy in the Middle East for General Mattis during the Arab Spring, and I got that job because I ran operations in the Pacific 2 years prior to that. We have some geopolitical problems right now that we've never experienced, like Russia partnering with China. That's going to be a serious issue, and we better get people up there that have a bigger world view than just the 10th District.
All right, Sandra Parrish.
I'd like to go back to Colonel Sims. As an international pilot for Delta, In recent years, in recent reports, the U.S. will lose about half of its pilots to retirement in the next 15 years. Now, with a daughter on her way to becoming a commercial pilot, I know the hurdles personally that they have to go through, not just with the FAA, but with building hours, the cost of training. What recommendations would you have if elected to the FAA that could increase the number of pilots, and what would that be?
I think the FAA standards are good, and they've proven to keep us safe through the years. That's not where the bend will come. The bend will come through the corporations, the airlines, actually investing in training and starting pipelines for young pilots to be nurtured and brought into the fold. The military doesn't produce as many pilots as we need right now, and industry will have to step to the plate and fill that vacuum.
And can I comment on that too? When I oversaw Peachtree DeKalb Airport, there was a very, very intensive program where we're training young pilots, young people, getting them to get their pilot's license, to go on into commercial airlines. And so we have an opportunity at a lot of these general aviation airports to train and get good people in place, young men and women, so they can go on and be pilots in commercial airlines.
Donnell?
May I comment as well?
You may indeed.
I've got a commercial instrument pilot's license, and I question people all the time. How in the world can a young person get airline transport pilot's license? It just is so expensive. And I agree with Colonel Sims. The industry needs to come to the plate, to use a trite phrase, and start actually training young people to be pilots, so that our lovely questioner tonight can actually, her daughter can afford to be the pilot that she wants to be.
I want to jump in,
Go ahead.
if I can. I want to make a comment. Yes, we have a shortage of pilots right now. It's a concern. The biggest concern I have about shortages of employment is in my sheriff's departments and my police departments. We have districts and counties right now suffering. They're down 30 or 40 officers that they can't staff because no one wants to take the job, one, because of pay, and two, because how we've awfully treated our first responders and our police forces. So I think what we ought to do to make this a more productive debate is talk about our communities. How do we make them safer and solve that shortage before I start getting concerned about pilots flying around in 737s globally?
Well, looks like we're all doing this,
But
right?
the question was about pilots, not about
All
law
right, hang
enforcement.
on,
I hope
Vernon.
we talk about law enforcement.
Let's go, Mr. Collins, you're up.
You know, Colonel Sims, you're exactly right. It's an aging population, and it's not just in the airline pilots. It's also in the trucking industry as well, which you alluded to earlier. And a lot of the reason for that is no one wants to get into these businesses where they are under such scrutiny and the liability is so high. It's a discouragement. Plus, we've encouraged so many people to go to college to get degrees in art and history that we don't actually push the jobs that are great paying jobs that offer great benefits. So what we need to do is get the government off of our backs. They just recently passed another regulation in the trucking industry that is going to make it even harder to get commercial driver's license.
David Curry, you're up if you want to add in on this.
Well, in agreement with Mr. Collins, as an 18-year-old kid going to school or going to work at Ford Motor Company, going to trade school, we need to make it where it's not an embarrassment to go to trade school. We are desperately in need of welders and electricians and plumbers and pipe fitters. I know the questions about pilots, but it's across all trades. We've got to do a better job of giving our young people an opportunity to go get a skill set they can make a living.
All right, Donnell, last question here of the segment.
Mr. Jones, in regards to law enforcement, and just specify for District 10, what do you think Congress could even do about adding to that?
You know, right now, a lot of law enforcement officers are leaving those jurisdictions where they're getting soft on crime. They handcuff the law officers and let the criminals go. They pass these no chase policies. How are you going to chase a criminal if you can't? How are you going to catch them if you can't chase them? The biggest thing to help with law enforcement is to give them pensions, make it portable where they can go from one jurisdiction to another and not lose their pension. That is a big issue. And the other is, don't just give them a stimulus check. They get that morning, is gone that evening. What can you do to support them where they're not worried about being indicted, or they're not worried about losing their jobs. Why? Because they enforce the law. We have to support law enforcement officers. But pensions is a big thing, and portable pensions like Florida and South Carolina, where they can go from one jurisdiction to another. That's a big recruitment tool in itself, to give them that portable pension, because that pension lasts them for the rest of their lives when they retire.
All right, I think everybody ought to have
Jeff, I'd like to
a
chime in
comment
on
to
that.
that.
Yeah.
I think everybody gets about 15 seconds on this to be heard on this issue.
And is
Where-
that
Yes, where
law enforcement?
Yes.
We got to pay them more. We've got to leave money here in Georgia. And that's what I fought for, and send powers back to the states of the people. We need to leave money in the local jurisdiction so they can pay our law enforcement more.
Mr. Collins?
Well, we have a image problem too. We have a national media that is so liberal, and they have just decimated the police. We don't need to defund the police. We need to fund them and stand behind them publicly.
Let's keep moving down.
Look, part of the problem we have in America today was the defund the police movement. The Democrats brought that idea up. All of a sudden, they see how it's working out for America. Then they try to lay it off on the Republicans. We need to be encouraging young people to look at the law enforcement, give them the resources they need, give resources to the sheriff's department, police departments, everyone they need to do the job correctly and be safe.
And let's keep going.
Yeah, look, policing is a major issue because, like they're saying earlier, they can't staff, but also the future generation doesn't exist. Current police officers, when they're asked if they'd want their children to be law enforcement, they no longer want their children to be involved in this. It used to be a legacy position, so I'm proposing what we call a halo bill that gives officers a halo of protection around their body so that people cannot approach them in a threatening manner. And also, what we need to talk about, instead of cutting the state income tax, let's cut the state income tax for all law enforcement officers in the state of Georgia. Maybe the legislation get that done.
All right, let's finish with two more statements here very quickly.
We have to restore respect in the police that's been driven down through Black Lives Matter and through our media, which has already been stated. We don't teach the history of our nation in a way that befits the police, and they've been such an important part of our law-abiding culture that needs to be taught and restored.
And we'll close it up now.
So I would say it's not all about raising salaries. It's about raising dignity for these officers. In 1975, after the fall of Saigon, we couldn't recruit into the armed forces because of the image of being baby killers, which was absolutely untrue. So no one wanted to join. It wasn't about money. It was Ronald Reagan. He changed the tone and tenor and made it a noble profession, which law enforcement is. And once we start treating them like that, they will return.
All right, that is all the time we have for questions as we continue to move along here. Each candidate now will have 60 seconds for a closing statement, and you can't go beyond that or I'm sadly going to interrupt you. So, Dr. Brown, you get the first closing statement.
A Republican majority won't be enough to save America. Washington is notorious for turning outsiders into insiders, but it never changed me. I was in the swamp, but I never got slimy. I didn't bend, I didn't bow, I didn't cave. You knew me once as America's most conservative congressman, and nothing has changed. I'll fight every second of every day for conservative constitutional principles. If reelected, I'll go back with 7.5 years seniority. With my medical expertise, I'll be in prime position to once again chair the Science Investigations Committee and launch a deep dive investigation into Dr. Fauci and to COVID so Americans know the truth about COVID. We must never shut our economy down like we did with this one. Since I will not be a freshman and I'll be back in leadership, I'm the only candidate who can go to work immediately to save America. So if you want to restore the republic, to heal our land, you know what to do. Bring back Brown.
Mitchell Swan, your closing statement, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So we live in an absolutely exceptional country that's being run by unexceptional people right now. We have the world's greatest constitution, the freest markets, the fairest judicial system, but those great institutions are being corrupted and ruined by corrupt and selfish politicians that we've elected to D.C. Benjamin Franklin once said, to put forth benefit for the common good is divine. Well, right now, we have no one in D.C. looking after our common good. Few of the questions tonight address the common good of our lives. I want everyone to have an abundant life. We're not looking for people that just vote well. We need conservative leaders in Washington. I need people in Washington that wow, that happens once in a while. So we don't just need conservative voters, we need conservative leadership. But we actually, and someone alluded to that, we need mature statesmen again up in Washington, not immature young men having battles on the internet. So anyways, and you want to make this country great again, we need to get strong leaders back in Washington. The 2022 wave for the conservatives begins this month. Please consider me as a vote.
Marc McMain, if you would give us your closing statement, please.
Yeah, look, I'm married to my beautiful wife, Liliana. Together, we have 2 boys, Matthew and Marcus, who are now in college pursuing their American dream. We had the golden years in front of us. I decided to get involved because we need an outsider in Washington, D.C., and I'm the last outsider left in this race. Like I said earlier, the journey that I've taken from being broke as a teenager to having started several successful businesses has more than prepared me. We don't need more experienced politicians. We've got plenty of those. Matter of fact, we've been running that experiment for the past several decades, and it's not working out. Donald Trump proved that the outsider mentality is what's needed and what is effective in Washington, D.C. If you elect me to be your next representative, I will not let you down. I will get term limits passed. We will protect police. We will protect our borders. And we will move our district, our state, our nation forward. I'm Marc McMain. Visit my website, markforcongress.com, and I spell my first name with a C. Would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Vernon Jones, it is your turn.
Yes, I want to thank Atlanta Press Club and all those from the 10th Congressional District. You know, I was born and reared on a farm in North Carolina. My parents taught me the importance of hard work, faith-based, and to get a quality education. I shop at Walmart. I'm pro-life, I'm pro-gun. I am pro-family, and certainly pro-small business. President Trump talked to me about running for Washington, running for Congress, and I accepted that challenge. Why? Because you and I both know that Joe Biden has destroyed this country, and Kamala Harris is right behind him. If you elect me, I'll go to Washington and I'll fight for you. I'll fight to abolish the IRS. I'll fight to bring term limits into fruition. I'll fight inflation because I understand what you're doing or what you're paying at the gas pump and what you have to pay for a pound of ground beef. We have an issue with our inflation. I'll fight to secure our borders. You know, look at me. I've got more hits from the liberal media than anybody on this stage. Why? Because I'm Trump tested, Trump vetted, Trump endorsed. And if you elect me, I will go ahead with America First agenda and make the 10th Congressional District great again.
David Curry, it is your turn.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for the 10th Congressional District. You know, traveled across this district over the last year, I heard one consistent theme. Everyone loved President Trump's policies. They loved his policies. He got our country back on track in a time when we desperately needed it. But our country is facing some serious issues today. Joe Biden and the radical Democrats are destroying our country. Friends, look at Chuck Schumer. He even said it. Give me Warnock and give me Georgia, and we change the moral fabric of America, and they're doing just that. But that's why I'm running for Congress. To fix this mess created by politicians who are hell-bent on destroying our country. Friends, I need your help. You see, I believe in America. I believe in the American dream. I believe in American values. I believe in American exceptionalism. But if we don't make the right choice this election cycle, we very well may lose America. Join David Curry for Congress. I'd love to have your support. I'd love to have you vote. It would be an honor and a privilege to be your next congressman. Thank you.
Mike Collins, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. I am Mike Collins, candidate for Congress here in Georgia's 10th District, and I want you to know I was born, raised, live, and work here in the 10th District. And yes, I can even vote in the 10th District. See, I've never been elected to anything in my life. My wife and I, we've spent the last 30-plus years raising youngins and building a successful trucking company. And that alone gives me a unique qualification that none of the other people have. So if you are looking for someone that is truly pro-Trump, an America First agenda candidate, someone that'll stand up not only to the lunatic left over there, but to the rhinos, the elites, and the establishment in our own party, I need your help. Because you see, the time for compromise, the time for bipartisanship, that's over with. This is the best time in our lifetime, y'all, to send Republicans to Congress. Not just Republicans, but the right Republicans to Congress. We need true warriors to go up there and fight for us. I'd love to have your support, and I would love to have your vote. Thank you.
All right, Alan Sims.
Thank you for hosting this forum today. Look, as an airline pilot, whenever I come home from Europe and turn on the news, things have gotten worse. As a new granddad, I know that the time to fight is right now. At West Point, I took an oath to defend this nation, and for the 30 years immediately after that, I did just that. I led and conducted worldwide military operations, including Afghanistan, where I personally led 59 combat missions in my A-10 Warthog. In Jerusalem, I led deployment of Israel's Iron Dome system. And at the Pentagon, I led DoD efforts to establish energy independence for this nation. I know how to get things done in Washington. Look, you sent me to West Point, you sent me to the War College, you asked me to serve you in Afghanistan, Israel, and Washington. Now send me to Congress, and together, let's secure the blessings of liberty for our children and for our grandchildren.
We want to thank all of you for being here. We greatly appreciate it. And it is an opportunity for voters in the 10th to hear what you stand for and to get a good look at you. And we appreciate your candor and we appreciate your involvement in the process today. And that concludes our debate. We want to remind voters that Election Day is approaching Tuesday, May 24th, not that far away, and early voting is now underway. We want to thank all the candidates again, and to our panel of journalists, Danelle Suggs and Sandra Parrish, greatly appreciate your involvement in this today. We also want to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging today's debate. And of course, a lot of debates are coming your way in the days ahead that you will enjoy seeing and certainly have a clearer understanding of politics in Georgia. That is it for us for now. And a reminder to visit theatlantapressclub.org. I'm Jeff Hullinger from 11 Alive. Thanks for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series.